off-season wish list. Here we go, Kmart. It's not Christmas, but I want to know what's on your wish list for this offseason.
Listen, I've covered this guy a long time. I want to see Myles Garrett leave Cleveland and go to Detroit. Yes, you heard me. You know why? Because in their last 2 playoff games, the Lions defense gave up 79 points. That cannot happen. I understand they had a lot of injuries, but adding Myles Garrett to Aiden Hutchinson, who's going to come back from injury, I think is the perfect fit.
What do you think of it, Jeffrey?
I 100% agree. And I think in a league where they're going to have to compete in the NFC, they got to get passers on the ground. They got to have closers. Having one closer you can slide to makes it much more difficult.
It's a no-brainer. When you have a Hall of Famer available in his 20s, Greeny, if I'm Brad Holmes, GM of the Lions, pay the bill and get to the Super Bowl.
I've heard a lot of other teams thrown around out there. A lot of Commanders, because they have the quarterback on the rookie deal. So we'll see. Myles Garrett wants to be traded. We'll see if that happens. Mike T, let's go to your off-season wish list.
Bree, this one's easy. Kirk Cousins to the Cleveland Browns. In Kirk Cousins' productive career, great stat from Hembo. His best QBR was with Kevin Stefanski when they were together in Minnesota. This is a marriage of convenience. Both sides could use each other. Deshaun Watson likely won't pay. Kevin Stefanski has a really important year. Get the most out of Kirk Cousins in 2025.
What do you think, Kmart?
You know what? It's not sexy on paper, but it makes football sense, especially the Minnesota ties. Kevin Stefanski, obviously, Kirk Cousins is there. The thing that has stopped the Browns is the fact that they haven't had good QB play consistently. So I like it, Mike.
It makes sense, and it's also cheap. It's sort of the Russell Wilson thing from last year, right? Most of the contract is already being paid. All right, Jeffrey, what's on your off-season wish list?
I'm going to go Davante Adams to the Dallas Cowboys. I have talked about they need a true 2 to complement CeeDee Lamb. And it fits in the system because the way that Dak likes to play QB, a lot of timing, a lot of rhythm, where Davante Adams has had that experience with Aaron Rodgers. I think he's extremely productive. I think he's a great fit for the locker room. They have other places in Dallas they need to fix, but giving them a true 2 that could be as productive and in the red zone, I think he makes a massive difference as well for Dallas. That's where I would head.
What do you think, Tannenbaum?
It's not bad. I mean, this list is so massive. They need 2 offensive linemen. Zach Martin may retire. Terrence Steele gave up 14 sacks. They need a running back. And we're not even talking about the defense yet. So Davante Adams would be a step in the right direction. But that list is a mile long, Greeny.
Well, speaking of the Cowboys, I mentioned this in the open. Dak Prescott was asked about the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl and how close his team is to catching them. Here's what he said.
I feel like we compete with the Eagles and beat them for the most part when we've played them. I don't want to say check the record when they're the guys holding the trophy right now. So credit to them. They've earned it and they deserved it by all means. But, yeah, very close, especially when you even watch the NFC game, the NFC Championship. And those 2 teams that we battle against each and every year a couple of times. And as I said, feel confident about we've gotten the better part each and every time. To see it in such a dominating fashion, credit to them. It's our turn and it's on us.
Boy, I feel terrible that he was asked that question in that setting, right? Because what's he going to say?
That's right.
Oh, they're way better than us.
Yeah.
We have no chance whatsoever. But now you say it, and now all of a sudden, Kmart is making that face.
I need everybody to stop asking Cowboys players stuff. I need them to stop. Because here's the thing. This is a talented roster. We've seen it time and time again. And but the delusion that is there, I think, and the reason I say delusion is because they're not objectively looking at the roster and talking about the holes that clearly are there. From the top down, Jerry Jones, part of the issue is he's overinflated what he has on his team, so then he doesn't make the requisite moves to improve the roster. I get it. Terrible question for Dak to have to answer, but he doesn't have to say, I think we're close, because we play them well all the time. Well, the issue is not the Eagles. It's the fact that you guys lost last year to the Packers. It's the fact that you guys each year end up beating yourselves, and that ultimately is the problem.
Greeny, here's the reality. They're closer to the bottom of the NFC East than to the top. And when you look at the math, and we have a graphic on this, when one guy in Dak Prescott is making $60 million a year, and Jaden Daniels, who arguably is already better, younger, and more athletic, is making $9 million a year.
Graphic.
Wow. Look at these cap numbers. And you just talked about Myles Garrett, among countless other things that will happen in the offseason. Just do the math. Where's Myles Garrett more likely to go?
Yeah.
You don't need an abacus to figure out that.
An abacus.
To be clear, because people will look at that and they won't know this. His number won't be 89.
Right, so cut it in half. Cut it in half, whatever it is. Plus, they need 2 offensive linemen, a running back, and everything else. But if you're the Washington Commanders, Greedy, you said this all fall. This is the worst version of the Commanders for the foreseeable future. You have a young superstar in Jaden Daniels. Go fix your defense. Go get Myles Garrett, amongst other things. And that's why, to me, Dak Prescott, be careful what you wish for. It's not just the Eagles. Watch out for Washington.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I want you to hear what Swagoo said about this. So whenever things happen with the Cowboys, I always like to hear what Marcus has to say because he's a former Cowboy and he still loves the team and the organization and the fans. This was Marcus's reaction to Dak saying what he said.
Right now, you're not close to them. Right now, you're not in the same conversation with them. They've actually been to 3 Super Bowls and have won 2 of them, and the first one was with the backup to Carson Wentz. So I don't want to hear Dak say that right now. It's not the time to say anything in regards of being close to the Philadelphia Eagles. Nothing.
Literally.
God bless
Literally. Yes,
so again,
literally.
This is a position none of the other 3, well, maybe to some degree, Mike, but for the most part, you're the only one who might know this. Like when the other team is winning and someone asks you a question, like should Dak have not said that? Like,
no, he's got to say it. Listen, he's got to breathe life into his locker room. This is a no-win for Dak, and if he gets up there and goes, yeah, man, we're 10 players away, that's going to resonate poorly, right? There's no good answer when you get asked these questions when you struggled the way you have. But here's the reality. I will say this: the work to be done is by Jerry and Steven.
That's right.
That's the problem. And until they prove to you that they're willing to do the hard work, that means spending money in free agency, going to get the Devontae Adams, going to get the Zach. Like if I'm them defensively, I go get Williams from Philly. I go get Vaughn from Philly. I'm making them weaker and I'm getting better. But you got to open your checkbook, and that's going to cost them money. And that's the facts.
Great stat from Hembo here. Last 4 off seasons in terms of spending ranking. 26th, 25th, 28th, and 32nd. And part of that though is, hey, you got to go pay CeeDee Lamb. Hey, you got to go pay Dak Prescott. I think where the criticism is, be more proactive. Maybe it's a little bit cheaper. And by the way, you're going to have to deal with Micah Parsons here at some point. So you may want to go add Devontae Adams or Myles Garrett, right? But you got to keep Micah Parsons. I think if they could be more proactive and aggressive, Greeny, that would help them.
And I want to make sure I say this. I don't think they're not with the Eagles. I'm not trying to put them together. They're not as far away from being competitive as I think we're making it sound. Being competitive and comparing yourself to the Eagles roster right now is probably just a bad look, but they can get there. The issue is the Jerry and Steven of it all, because Schottenheimer's not going to have a decision. He's going to ask for these players, and are you willing to go do? Last year he said he was all in and wasn't. That's going to be the facts of what Dak Prescott's going to be good. As long as he stays healthy, they'll be fine. They're just not going to win a lot of big ones.
What did we say this morning? Sign Devontae Adams, draft Ashton Genty, and then pick up a couple of players. They still don't have an offensive line, though, right? There's so many.
The offensive line, what we saw in the Super Bowl is the trenches matter.
Yeah.
Invest there.
And Greedy, how about your defensive line and maybe a bigger linebacker? I mean, we're talking about 9 or 10 pieces.
Yeah.
They may be competitive because they have the pass rusher and the quarterback, but I'm telling you, there's a massive gap, and Washington has leapfrogged them.
They got pass rusher, wide receiver. They got a closer on defense. They have 3 key components. Those matter in the grand scheme of things. But again, that's a playoff team. That's not pushing in the playoffs. That's the difference.
Yeah, and this year the quarterback got hurt and they weren't even that. We'll see. Coming up, the team that they are chasing, it is an annual rite of spring. Jalen loses his OC. We'll tell you how much that hurts his chances of being back next year. Plus the quarterback carousel about to spin.
Folks, we got to talk about Travis Kelce and the big old question mark hanging over his future in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs' star tight end isn't rushing to make any decisions about playing next season. He made that crystal clear on his New Heights podcast with his brother, Jason. Now, y'all know Kelce ain't just famous for his skills on the field. He's also known as Taylor Swift's beau. But right now, his focus is on whether he's got the fire to keep going. In American football, Kelce admitted that the grind of the last 6 years has been brutal. Playing in 5 Super Bowls out of 6 seasons? That's a whole lot of extra games. More football means more hits, more strain, and way less time for recovery. He talked about how all that time in the training facility, putting in the work, taking on challenges and pushing himself, has been both a blessing and a curse. This year, it was getting to me, he said. When you're on the back nine of your career, things start feeling different. Now Kelce ain't the kind of guy to half-step anything. If he's coming back, he wants to be all in for himself and for his teammates. If I return, it's got to be a decision made with my whole heart, he said. Not something I'm just doing out of obligation. I owe it to my team to be fully committed, not just showing up, 'cause it's expected. But here's where things get real. Kelce wasn't thrilled with his performance against the Bills or in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. He had just 2 catches for 19 yards against Buffalo and 4 receptions in the big game. For a guy used to dominating, that kind of stat line ain't easy to swallow. Not being there for my team when it mattered most, that's tough, he admitted. It messes with your head, no doubt. So here's the big question. Does Kelce have another season left in him, or is it time to hang up the cleats? The Chiefs faithful are holding their breath, hoping he's got one more run in. Him. But only Kelce knows if he's still got that fire. What do y'all think? Should he give it another shot, or call it a day while he's still on top?